Hare Krishna, everyone. You're watching Bhakti Kids Sangha. I'm Abhidaya Devi Dasi, and today I am going to be sharing with you a little seminar that I put together. So, just a little disclaimer, I've put this seminar together myself, but I have had it reviewed by the Sastric Advisory Committee or a member of the Sastric Advisory Committee, just to check that all of the teachings are in line with Srila Prabhupada's teachings, all the quotes are correct, all the information is there and they're incorrect and in line with Srila Prabhupada's teachings. And I've also had this seminar reviewed by a few different devotee doctors and pediatricians just to fact check all the science one last time. I did fact check everything against a website, which I will give you at the end. But I also had this entire slideshow fact checked by a developmental pediatrician and a doctor as well, both devotees. So with that being said, I'm going to jump in with why I put this seminar together before I bring up the slides. So I was at a festival here in Sydney, and I think it was Kids Jam Mastami, actually. Beautiful festival. The kids were doing such an amazing job of all the plays and all the dances and the costumes and the dress ups. I mean, it really was wonderful. But there was a very interesting play that was put on, and it really got me thinking, and it really kind of propelled me to put this seminar together. And it also made me wonder, what would someone who maybe it was their first time at the temple, or they were new and they hadn't spent a lot of time around devotees, what they might have thought seeing this play. So the premise of the play was about a devotee child and a non-devotee child making friends at school and spending time together. And it was very, very interesting, the contrast that was painted between the devotee family and the non-devotee family. And, the devotee parents were architects, they were university, and there was a lot of emphasis put on that they were university educated, that they were architects. And the non-devotee family, they were just menial manual laborers. They were just, not educated, not in a job that was as lofty as an architect's. And that was really, really being emphasized in this play because it was mentioned sort of time and time again. And they start spending time together, they start going to each other's houses, and the devotee child is kind of presented as this exemplary child, and the devotee family are being propounded as this exemplary family that exemplifies family values. And then the non-devotee family, well, they're just uneducated, intoxicated, materialistic persons who don't care about their children. And the reason this was such a red flag to me is because through doing this podcast, I have come to meet many, many wonderful Gurukul teachers, people running Gurukuls, people teaching Gurukuls, even people that have founded Gurukuls. And they have all told me that actually the opposite is true. That often devotee parents, the words I hear time and time again is apathetic and hard to contact, hard to get hold of, that there's a kind of disconnect between where their responsibility ends and then where the school begins, and there's no blending of that, right? So a lot of these teachers have taught in non-devotee schools and devotee schools, and they have all kind of voiced to me that the non-devotee parents were actually a lot more engaged. And this is the wording that they used: engaged in their children's education, in their development, in their welfare, in their well-being, everything. So that's very interesting to me. It was kind of like a hypocrisy, actually, that I was seeing kind of playing out before me. This idea that somehow we're so much better and we're so much better parents. And hey, like, I'm not sitting here saying I'm a perfect parent at all. I make mistakes all the time, and I'm constantly on a growth, journey, and trying to do better every single day. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm presenting myself as a perfect parent at all. But I have noticed that there is a kind of layer of apathy when it comes to children in ISKCON, and largely that comes from not just from management but from the parents themselves. The parents are quite happy to get to the temple and discard their children wherever and whenever they can. And I get it. You want to be in the kirtan, you want to hear the class. We live stressful lives, disconnected from family, and we need that time at the temple, but there's ways to do it. And we can't just put that all on the management or all on the schools. I've had school teachers come and say to me that the parents don't want to pay the fees, or that the temple president expects their kids to come to the school for free, not really setting the best example for the congregation. So and this is coming from various yatras all over the world, not just from one yatra or just from Australia, where I'm based. So it really got me thinking. This play was very, very interesting because it was almost kind of going against what I had actually seen and heard and experienced myself whilst being in ISKCON and being involved in children's services and, trying to serve Vaishnava families as best as I can. So, I feel like there's change happening in ISKCON. We are having lots and lots of discussions at the moment, not all of them constructive, but there are discussions happening about Vaishnavi voices in ISKCON, women's place in ISKCON, female Diksha gurus or Vaishnavi Diksha gurus. We are talking about child abuse in gurukuls a lot. We're going through a reckoning. Yeah, we're going through a reckoning, like, much like the rest of the world is, about a lot of these things. And we're really being forced to take a look about what our priorities are and what do we really value and what's our mission. Like, we're really, really having to kind of nut down and look at those things. And I actually believe that the way that we view and treat children is part of that. And I'm not just talking about the GBC, I'm not just talking about management, I'm talking about the community, I'm talking about us as families, even right down to us parents, the direct parents of those children, that this is part of that reckoning. This is part of that asking questions about who we want to be and how we want to be seen, and what do we want to be known for and what's important to us. And we see all throughout our sastra that family values are very important and very upheld, not only by Srila Prabhupada, but also in our sastra as well. So I'm identifying there's a little bit of a disconnect there between what our ideals are and what's actually playing out in reality. So I put this seminar together because I really wanted to, if you're watching this, and you've stumbled upon this talk, to really look inside yourself and ask yourself some questions. And it's not about blame. It's not about making yourself feel bad. It's not about sitting there, beating yourself up or anything like that. It's about really pragmatically looking at your own parenting and asking some questions about how effective it is. Are we really upholding those family values that we propound so highly in our culture? Are we really safeguarding our children? All of those things, like, ask ourselves those very, very important questions. And I ask myself every day. Like, I'm continually running an assessment on myself and my parenting. And some days I fail, some days I succeed, some days I'm kind of neuter and just in the middle. And it's really important to have that level of self-awareness, I think. It's not about trying to be perfect. It's about trying to be the best that you can and, following Srila Prabhupada's teachings as best we can. And we're going to be looking at that in this seminar. We're going to be using Srila Prabhupada's teachings as a guide, because, I'm not an expert. Prabhupada's the expert that we're going to be listening to today. So I'm just a conduit, handing on those kind of those quotes. So I'm going to jump in and bring the slides up. Let's bring them up. Let's have a look. So I've called the seminar Vaishnava Children, the Heart of Our Society. And if you're not following Bhakti Kids Sangha and you've just stumbled on this talk, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have YouTube. We're on Instagram as @Bhakti_Kids_Sangha. We're on Facebook as @Bhakti Kids Sangha, all one word. And we're also on YouTube, the same, @Bhakti Kids Sangha. So it's on a handle as well on YouTube. And I just want to ask you all, can you click the subscribe, click the subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it really supports this channel. So let's just jump in. I'm just going to share a couple of things about myself, just so you know a little bit about me and who this Mataji is that's giving you this seminar today. So my name's Abhidaya Devi Dasi, and I'm a disciple of Kadamba Kanana Maharaj. I'm a wife to Bhakta Cody, and I'm a mother to 2 children. So I have a daughter called Krishna Leela, who is just about to turn 2, and then I have a son called Krishna Balaram, who is 11. I'm based in Sydney, Australia with my family, and I'm originally from London. You can probably tell by the accent. And I'm the founder of Bhakti Kids Sangha, and I'm a children's advocate. Bhakti Kids Sangha is a platform designed to meet the needs of devotee families. So I founded Bhakti Kids Sangha in the COVID lockdown because we were all, most of us, whatever country you were in, at some point or another, sometimes multiple times, we had about 3 lockdowns here. We were all locked inside. And my son was really, really struggling, with the being locked inside and the no sports and the no in-person communication with peers. I mean, it was really, really hard for him. So we dove into our spiritual practice, but we also started sharing that online in a hope that maybe some other families might, or that we could kind of, share something and, in a way to help other people. Not that what we were doing was perfect, but just to kind of, people in my yatra were like, you should really put this online. It's really good what you're doing. So I set up an Instagram, and it honestly started as we were just live streaming yoga because all the children were doing online learning and they were stuck behind computers. And, that's not healthy for anyone, least of all a developing child. So we started live streaming yoga classes. I'm a qualified yoga teacher. And me and my son Krishna Balaram were doing it together, and it kind of went from there, and it's kind of blossomed into its whole, its own thing. There's a podcast. We've got kids that are coming and teaching scripture classes on this channel. I highly recommend you check that out. There's classes by kids for kids. You can watch that if you're an adult. They're really, really brilliant classes. So the platform has really grown over the last year, but it did start in the COVID lockdown as a response to the lockdown measures. So it was designed to meet the needs of devotee families. And another reason was, if you look at the other ISKCON podcasts, if you look at a lot of the other Hare Krishna channels, they will focus on a lot of very sort of esoteric concepts and themes. And look, I love that. I listen to all of them. It's wonderful. What I felt might have been a little bit lacking was there was like no practical how to live advice, particularly when it came to the Grihastha ashram. There's a lot of emphasis on renunciation, being a brahmachari, taking saffron and being a sannyasi, which is wonderful if that's the ashram that you're in or that you aspire to be in. But there's like thousands of Grihastas, and I just felt like there was a little bit of a gap, or a large gap, in terms of resources for them and recognition for them and help or advice. And, like I said, I'm not an expert. So that's why I put the podcast together, so I could bring people with expertise on that could come and share those expertise for the families. So that's how, I was and still am continuing to serve devotee families. You can find Bhakti Kids Sangha on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. The Bhakti Kids Sangha podcast is a tailored podcast for parents raising children in Krishna consciousness. So I just touched on that. We're raising children in Krishna consciousness. A lot of us are doing it in the West, outside of India, where you might be in a situation where your child is the only vegetarian or the only devotee in the school or something like that. Here in Australia, if you have a TV and it's on, every second ad is like meat and gambling, and it's just wantonly advertised over and over and over and over. So you've got all these kind of very direct, quite aggressive influences kind of seeping into your home. So it kind of makes raising your children in Krishna consciousness, it adds that added layer of complexity, because you're almost swimming against the tide of what popular culture where you are is kind of telling your children. So we also have talks on engaging children at home, printables, creative learning and storytelling ideas. So there's a playlist on the YouTube channel, creative learning ideas and storytelling ideas, and they're all presented by me. They're all how I make my flashcards, how I make my puppets, ideas for parents that they can either use, not use, or borrow parts of, whatever you want. So I'd really recommend that if you have children, or you're a teacher, or you're a carer, or a grandparent, or someone that has contact with children, that you take a little bit of time to kind of look around on the YouTube channel and have a look at what's on there, because there's actually a lot of different features. we've got yoga, we've got the podcasts, we've got classes by Kids for Kids, we've got creative learning and storytelling ideas. So there's lots and lots of different things on there, lots of different features, and you know, God knows what else I will come up with next. So keep looking back, and take some time looking at the playlist, because there is actually a lot there. So yeah, there's much more, and then probably much more to come. So that's Bhakti Kids Sangha in a nutshell, and a little bit about my service, and that's where this is going to end. I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of context as to who I am and what Bhakti Kids Sangha is, in case you're unfamiliar. So this is how we're going to start, and this is going to be our emphasis throughout. What does Srila Prabhupada say about children and our responsibility as parents? And there's the key: our responsibility as parents. And that is what this whole seminar is going to be about our responsibility as parents. As I mentioned in the start of this talk, and this isn't to make anyone feel bad or singled out or anything like that, but I have heard time and time again, and felt through my own experience, that there is a layer of apathy when it comes to children, especially when it comes to in the temple, and at school. And there's this idea of like, well, if I've dropped my kids off at the temple, I've dropped them off at school, that's it. It's like my responsibility ends here. No, it doesn't. And we're going to, and Srila Prabhupada, in fact, don't listen to me, listen to Srila Prabhupada. So I'm going to share with you some of my favorite quotes that Srila Prabhupada spoke about children and our responsibilities as parents. So here's the first one. I may inform you that all of our children born of Krishna conscious parents, they are welcome, and I want hundreds of children like that, because in the future we expect to change the face of the whole world, because child is the father of man. So let's dissect that a little bit. Firstly, Prabhupada is very, very clearly saying here that Vaishnava children born of devotee parents are actually special, and that he wants hundreds of them. You know, he wants unlimited children in the movement, because children are the father of man. So therefore, you know, they are the future parents, they are the future temple presidents, they are the future prime ministers and doctors and nurses and teachers. So if we train them to be wonderful devotees, imagine what they're going to be like when they're adults. Imagine what they're going to be like in management. I mean, Prabhupada is literally telling us here, and I just think we need reminding of this. So we're going to spend some time on quotes here, and I would urge you not to skip this part, because it's very, very important. So take care of these children. If you can make one child Krishna conscious, that is a great service. Krishna will be very pleased. So many children will come. Gurukula is our most important project. If the children are given a Krishna conscious education from early childhood, then there will be a great hope for the future of the world. Wow. Now, I haven't sat in any GBC meetings, but I wonder if they are discussing this quote about Gurukula is our most important project. So he didn't say book distribution or building temples, or, and all of those things are important as well. I'm not dismissing those things. But here it very clearly says Gurukula is our most important project. So schooling the children, raising the children as devotees is the most important project, right? If a child is given Krishna conscious education from early on, then there is great hope for the future of the world. Like we said in the first quote, these children grow up to be the change makers, prime ministers, doctors, nurses, the people that, you think of all the people that we know in society that are like cultural icons, that everyone knows the name of, if those people were devotees, imagine what the world would be like. That's what Prabhupada's telling us here. And that we do that by starting from the bottom when people are just come out of the womb, and then nurturing that through their childhood, so that when they become adults, there is no question that they will be amazing devotees, that they will do some wonderful service, or that they will be wonderful parents, or whatever it is, because you laid the foundation early on. Okay, let's move on. If we are able to make just one generation of our children find Krishna conscious preachers, that will be the glory of our movement and the glory of your country as well. If we neglect somehow or other, or if we lose one Vaishnava, that is a very great loss. Do you know what I love about that? It really illustrates Prabhupada's, the way Prabhupada valued every single person. If we lose one Vaishnava, that is a very great loss. I would love to know what the stats are of how many devotees we've lost in the last couple of years due to the various scandals and kind of issues we've had around, can women give class? Can women lead a kirtan? Like, the fact that we're still discussing these things, I'd be very interested to know how many genuinely interested in Krishna consciousness people we have lost, or they've gone to other maths. They might have gone to the Gaudiya math. So here he's talking about making whole generations of children find Krishna conscious preachers. And if you're in any doubt of this, go check out the classes by Kids for Kids. And your confusion around this will be dissipated, because actually children are the most amazing preachers, and they have a purity that we simply just don't have. And like I said, check out those classes, the preaching that those children are doing. I filmed a class with a 9-year-old boy called Abe Charan, funnily enough. Wonderful name for a wonderful boy. Abe Charan, 9 years old, from Phoenix, Arizona. And he taught one of the best classes I've probably ever heard. They are wonderful preachers. They are very valuable to our movement. And I feel like Srila Prabhupada really saw that, and he's talking about that here in these quotes. Let's move on to the next quote. Regarding your question, should force be used on the children? No. There should be no forcing the children to do anything. This is all nonsense. Who devised these things? If we want them to become great devotees, then we must educate the children with love, not in a negative way. So right here, right now, if there's any confusion about smacking, physical punishments, hitting children, here's your answer from Prabhupada. Like, I don't think this could be any clearer. He simply says no, and that we should direct the children and discipline the children with love. And I couldn't agree with this statement more. My life experience has also reflected this teaching back to me. I was smacked as a child. I don't think it's an effective means of punishment. I don't think it corrects behavior. And actually what it does is it encourages children to hide those behaviors. They just become more cunning and find better ways to hide certain behaviors so that they avoid punishment. They don't actually learn anything from that punishment. And we have seen in ISKCON generations of Gurukulis that were abused by teachers, that were caned, that were physically punished, that were dragged out of bed and had cold water poured on them, at the age of like 5 or 6. So here we are hearing very, very distinctly, just in case there was any confusion about whether those were good practices or not, that they're not. And Srila Prabhupada is telling us that through his letters and his books. In a service-orientated community where there's a lot of emphasis on what we have to offer, it could be easy to see your children as obstacles to your sadhana and your services. Like, as a Mataji, we've all had this experience that when we have a baby, if we're really honest with ourselves, our rounds suffer. Like, if we're being really honest with ourselves, there'll be days our rounds don't get finished, or our rounds were not the quality that they were before we had that baby. So of course, our sadhana and our service gets affected, especially when we have a young baby. And I'd really love to invite you to open up your mind about what service could actually be. Yes, sitting in the temple and stringing garlands is beautiful and wonderful and needed. But if you've got a 2-month-old baby that needs to be breastfed every 2 to 3 hours, very unlikely you're going to be able to do that service at that time. Doesn't stay like that forever, but it's unlikely that you're going to be able to do that service at that time. So there's other services you can do. This is one of the reasons why I moved to doing online services, because I can be there for my children, but I can do it at home. I'm sitting at home, while my children are at the park recording this. So there are other ways that you can serve that are different maybe to the ways that you did before you had your children, right? And it will change. And as they grow older, that will also adapt too. But there's a lot of emphasis in ISKCON society of what can you contribute? How much service do you do? Like, what do you actually do? Like, I mean, I've experienced all of this. So when the children are young, they require a lot of time. They require a lot of energy. They require a lot of attention. You might be waking up like every 2 hours to breastfeed. I mean, you're going to be tired. You're going to be tired. You've got a material human body, and that's natural and normal. So I'm going to share with you a final quote by Srila Prabhupada, which I think is like almost the definitive quote on what our duties and responsibilities are as parents. So we're talking about dharma here, your dharmic duty as a parent, as a mother. And yeah, I'm just going to share it. Let's see what you think. These children are given to us by Krishna. They are Vaishnavas, and we must be very careful to protect them. These are not ordinary children. They are Vaikuntha children. And we are very fortunate that we can give them a chance to advance further in Krishna consciousness. That is a very great responsibility. Do not neglect it or become confused. Your duty is very clear. So I'm going to say that again, because I think it's really, really important to really drive this home. These children are given to us by Krishna. They are Vaishnavas, and we must be very careful to protect them. These are not ordinary children. They are Vaikuntha children, and we are very fortunate that we can give them a chance to advance further in their Krishna consciousness. That is a very great responsibility. Do not neglect it. Do not neglect it or become confused. Your duty is very clear. So this to me is a direct instruction. This is like, how people always say, oh, no one wrote the book on parenting. Well, okay, maybe no one wrote the book on parenting, but there are very clear dharmic instructions about parenting. And this is one of them. It's straight from Srila Prabhupada himself, from a letter, that you should not become confused about your responsibility. You should not start putting sadhana and service and how you appear to other devotees in the congregation above the welfare and protection of your children. I mean, that's what he's saying here so, so clearly. This is not like a wacky interpretation, like, your duty is very clear. I mean, you can't get clearer than that. Your duty is very clear. Do not neglect it or become confused. So he's used the word neglects there, which is very, very, very important. Prabhupada was so artful in the way he used words. Krishna Rupa told me once that Prabhupada, once was like sitting like, and people were like, Prabhupada, are you okay? Do you have a headache? And he said, I'm just trying to think of the right word. So do not neglect it or become confused. Neglect's a very, very interesting word, because when we drop our kids off at the temple, when we drop them off at school, and then we sort of cease to be engaged and cease to see it as our responsibility, that is neglect. It is, right? I'm just being very straight with you here. It's neglect. You are still responsible for them. Their welfare and their development and their material success is literally, and their Krishna conscious relationship is resting in your hands. It is a huge responsibility, massive responsibility. It's almost a wonder how, like, here in Australia, if you want to drive a car, you have to do 100 hours. You have a logbook. Someone has to sit there and monitor you. Someone has to sign it. You have to drive in the dark, in the light, in the rain. Like, it's like you have to jump through a million different hoops. And then you get one license, but then you have to, after a year, go for another license. And it's like this, it's like this convoluted thing. But like, anyone can have a child and just kind of get on with it. There's no training. There's no manual. There's no nothing. Like, it's a huge responsibility. And when you're a devotee parent, there's an added layer of responsibility, because it's not just the protection. It's not just making sure they get good grades. It's about how are they, what's their relationship with Krishna? Yeah, how are they connecting to Krishna? Are they cultivating a relationship with Krishna? Are they cultivating a relationship with Prabhupada? So there's a whole nother layer when you're a devotee parent on top of just regular parenting. So there's added challenges. So I hope you enjoyed looking at these quotes. I really enjoyed sourcing them and I really enjoyed studying them. And I found it very illuminating. And it really kind of almost made me feel kind of like encouraged to carry on with what I was doing with Bhakti Kids Sangha, because I feel like, children were important to Prabhupada. They were, he saw them as important parts of the movement. And so I'm trying to present an argument here in this seminar that we should all feel that way, that we should all look at them that way. So let's move on. So this seminar is going to be part of a series of seminars, because we're going to be looking, childhood is so vast and so much changes developmentally for children from the ages of like 1 to 5 and 6, and then 6 to sort of like 10, 11, and then 11 to the kind of teens, that I'm going to split them up. So this seminar is going to be focused on the first 5 to 6 years, right? And it's a lovely little picture of Krishna Leela there, Lali playing with her Hindi alphabet blocks. So the first 5 years are arguably the most important time. And when you go to a temple and you look at the kids' programs, they are always for 5 and 6 and up. And if that's not the case in your temple, you're in the minority. If there's a kids' program, it will largely be for 5 and overs, and the 5 and unders are kind of, well, where are they? What are they doing? What's happening? Right? These years are the most formative. They really are. So the child, when it's in the womb, is already learning, right? And already hearing its parents' voices, what to speak of lectures and verses and kirtan, the child is taking in so much. And we actually have an example of this from our sastra. That's right, you guessed it. It's Prahlad Maharaj. When he was in his mother's womb, who was the wife of a demon, he was the son of a demon. He should arguably have been born a demon, but he wasn't. He was born an exalted Vaishnava, an exalted devotee, because he heard the narrations and the discourse of Narada Muni while he was in the womb of his mother. So we actually have really tangible examples in our own sastra of the importance of the training even beginning before the child is born. When I was pregnant with Krishna Leela, towards the end, when the child really is quite fully developed and can hear very, very well from inside the womb, we went to Gita Jayanti. I mean, we would have gone anyway. I love Gita Jayanti. It's one of my favorite festivals, but it was like really special, that Gita Jayanti, because I knew that Lali was going to hear the whole Gita from start to finish. What a special, wonderful gift before you're even born, hearing the Gita. I wish I could have got that kind of mercy. It was really a special thing to do. So there are ways, and that's a practical example of something that you can do if you're pregnant and you've got a child in your womb. You can sing to them, you can read to them, play kirtan to them, all of those things, and your child will hear it and recognize the sounds. I listened to Madhuram, the bhajan, Adaram Madhuram. And when Lali was born, she would be so upbeat when she heard that song. She recognized the bhajan. So before they're born, you can actually start reading and sharing sastra with them, and verses and the Bhagavad Gita and all of that you can start sharing before they're born. Babies appear unaware of their surroundings, but they're taking in everything. And there's a lot going on inside their brains. So it's very, very easy to just dismiss under fives. And I think we've done that in ISKCON. I think most kids camps, most things, it will be 5, 6 and up. And there are baby sanghas. I know Bhaktivedanta Manor has a baby sangha run by, or at least founded by, the wonderful Vrinda Kishori. And I know that she also started baby sanghas elsewhere through other Mataji's, and that is wonderful. That's what we need. And we actually need that rolled out across all the yatras, not just in sort of progressive yatras like Bhaktivedanta Manor. We actually need them across the board for all children. Because as we said, this is the most important developmental time for them. And if we ignore that and kind of sideline them, what's that going to do to their Krishna consciousness? So they may seem unaware of their surroundings, but they're actually taking in everything. And between birth and the first year, a baby's brain doubles in volume. So our brains develop much faster in our early years as opposed to later in life. So, you'll hear sort of terms about like the plasticity of the brain. It's at its maximum at this time. So they're kind of sitting there drooling, maybe like banging a spoon or something and doing some repetitive thing. And you could easily think, oh, there's like no point talking to them about like what are they going to pick up realistically. I would argue that that is very deceptive. It looks like there's not much happening, but there is so much happening because the brain is doubling in size. 1 million neural connections a second being made in the brain in that first sort of year. So it's dangerous to dismiss this time as just, oh, just give them an iPad. Oh, just give them, oh, it won't matter, will it? Because they won't remember it. It won't matter. But actually, this is when they're forming the brain they're going to carry into adulthood. This is when they're forming their relationships and how they see themselves in the world, which they carry into adulthood. All of that is happening in this window of time. And I think we're missing it. I think we're missing it as a collective, and I think we're missing it as parents. The size of a child's brain reaches 90% of the adult size by the age of 5. I wish I knew the exact verse, but there's a verse in the Bible which my dad would often say. It was like, show me the boy at 5, give me the boy at 5 and I'll show you the man, or something like that, right? Because even then, it was kind of identified that those formative years, what goes on in those first 5 or 6 years makes the person, makes the man. And science backs this up. Peer-reviewed modern science is supporting that by saying the size of a child's brain reaches 90% of the adult size by the age of 5. When you think what happened, how much your body completely grows, all your cells and skin like completely regenerate, but your 90% of your brain mass has formed by the age of 5. So I really hope that I have strongly emphasized enough how important these first 5 years are. And that's why in this seminar, we're focusing on the first 5 years, because it is the most kind of undervalued time, but it's the most important time. So healthy development in these early years, in these first 5 years, relies on, and I'm going to share this with you because this seminar is going to be 100% practical. So 5 keys to healthy development in the first 5 years. And we're going to go through all of these one by one in great detail and with practical solutions as well, because they're all very, very important. All of these are going to, as we said from our verse from the Bible, will make the person, make the man, make the woman, make the Vaishnava. So there are 5 keys, and they are connecting, talking, playing, a healthy home, and community. And if you are, if you've read the Bhagavatam and you've read the Bhagavad Gita, you will probably already be thinking, hang on a minute, connecting, Bhakti yoga is all about connecting. The word yoga itself means connecting. A healthy home, the Grihastha ashram, we have ashrams, community, Sangha, this is Bhakti Kids Sangha, that I'm speaking to you through today. So all of these keys line up very, very well with Krishna conscious philosophy. This is one of these moments where all the sort of science is coming out now that's telling us about all this stuff. It is telling us what we already knew. It's already in the Bhagavatam. It's just somehow or other we missed it. And so hopefully we can be reminded today. And I'm going to be linking all of these elements to Krishna consciousness. So connecting. And I just want to draw your attention to the beautiful picture that I chose for connecting. I really spent a lot of time choosing the pictures for this seminar because I think pictures are really important. And it's a beautiful picture of Mother Urmila doing deity worship with her daughter. So connecting, the very word connection is yoga. The very word connection means yoga. Yoga, we use the word yoga all the time. Yoga has become like a mainstream word these days, right? But do we know what it really means? It means connecting, yoking, right? And not just to one's true self, as opposed to our ankara, our false ego, but also to Krishna, right? Bhakti yoga is about connecting to our true self and to Krishna. And one of the 5 keys in under 5's childhood development is also connecting, is also yoking. Yeah. So we have the 9 processes of devotional service. And what do? They all connect you to Krishna. Either you're hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the Lord's lotus feet, deity worship, as pictured here in this beautiful picture, praying, executing orders, serving as a friend, complete surrender. It's all about cultivating our bhakti and our connection to the Supreme Lord. And that is the true meaning of yoga. This modern interpretation of yoga that you have to go to a class and you have to have a mat that costs hundreds of dollars and you have to wear Lululemon. And no. Bhakti yoga is all about these 9 processes of devotional service and connecting to Krishna and cultivating that relationship with a personal and playful God, right? So I feel like it just blew my mind when I was researching these, 5 keys of under 5's development, because they were so related to bhakti. I mean, it was just crying out that it's related to bhakti. So we get this in the Bhagavatam. Prahlad, who's a child himself, shares the 9 processes of devotional service with us. And we use all of those to connect to Krishna as a means of connecting to Krishna. So I'm going to invite you to kind of challenge your concept of service and have a look at maybe, okay, not looking at service as right. I'm in a temple and I'm either cleaning or I'm cooking or I'm making garlands or I'm, on the altar doing the arti or something like that, right? What if you looked at your home as a temple, the Grihasta ashram, as opposed to the temple ashram or a brahmachari ashram, the Grihasta ashram, and that when you do your dharma within the ashram, that you're doing service. You're serving devotees, you're serving Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis through serving in this ashram. You're raising future Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis in this ashram. It really is the most wonderful and undervalued service there is in ISKCON. Just going to be blunt about it. Like it's so kind of almost scorned upon in some circles, like being a grihasta, but you're doing the most wonderful service because you are teaching these brand new little human beings. They're reincarnated souls, yes, but they're brand new in that new material body, and you're teaching them spiritual knowledge from birth. I mean, there's no better service than that. I'm not even, that's just it. It really is a wonderful service. So I'm really inviting you through this talk to kind of turn your concept of service on its head, to turn your concept of what you think even a temple is, and start seeing your home as a temple. Look at this beautiful picture of Mother Urmila doing deity worship with her daughter. I actually keep this picture on my phone because I find it so inspiring. Look how Mother Urmila is including her children in her sadhana. Deity worship is a sadhana, and she's including her child. She's carrying out her services like cleaning, book distribution, deity worship with her children. She was telling a lovely story one seminar about how she would cook the Sunday feast with her daughter strapped to her back in a baby carrier, and that her daughter would pull down the big sort of ladles and serving spoons and whack her on the head with them. And I laughed when I heard that, because my daughter does a very similar thing. Like, she will just kind of, she will open cupboard doors on my head while I'm cooking. And, if you're a mother, you can probably relate to that. So, as well as kind of challenging how we see what's the temple, what's service, I'm also challenging here about how we integrate our children into all of those things. Like, do we keep our children separate or do we integrate them? There's actually an extraordinary amount of parents in the yatra that I'm in who come to the temple and don't bring their children to the temple at all. And they leave them at a grandparent's house who's a non-devotee. And when I've, or there's been conversations, or I've asked about, why is that? Oh, we're letting them choose. We're letting them choose. And do you know why that's scary? Because there are no choices. If you don't teach your children Krishna consciousness and you don't start doing it today, someone else is going to teach your children, and it's going to be not what you want. Yeah. And I'm telling you that as someone who grew up in Kami life, went to regular schools, hung out with secular people, and was around all sorts of things growing up in London. There's this idea that you're giving them a choice. They're not getting a choice. You may as well chuck them in the sea and not give them a float, because they've got no hope against the onslaught of social media and advertising and meat and gambling propaganda. They have no protection. And this idea of you're letting them choose, you are not letting them choose. That is actually a fallacy that you're telling yourself. You're not letting them choose. You're not giving them a chance. Sorry if that's a strong opinion, but it's a very naive, at the kindest. It's naive. And there are many, many families, and many, like, second initiated, Brahminical, serving on the altar, or they've got some position in the temple, and they never bring their children to the temple. They never bring them. And then they say, oh, well, we're just giving them a choice. When they go to their grandparents' house, they eat meat, but that's giving them the choice. So you're letting your child take all that karma when they're not old enough to understand that that's what they're doing. You're not giving them a choice. So I just kind of wanted to share that, in this connection part of the talk, that yes, in Bhakti Yoga, we connect, but we're talking about connection to our children here. And giving them too much choice or not giving them any guidance at all is basically a form of neglect. Right? And, they need us. And Prabhupada was very clear in the quotes at the beginning of this talk that there is a very strong responsibility to raise our children as devotees, or at least try to, at the very least. Children need quality connection time with caregivers, away from distractions like screens, work, and the practicalities of daily life. So, connection with you. Now, it may be a devotional activity, it could be sadhana, but it might not. It might be something as simple as emptying the dishwasher. My daughter loves helping me do menial tasks, like vacuuming and emptying the dishwasher. I just remove all the sharp objects and then I let her help. I let her help with everything. And so much connection and relationship building happens when we do that together. Also, trying to keep some boundaries between work and home. And I know that's very difficult. My husband has a work phone. Turn it off. After 6 o'clock, turn it off. That's the advice I can give to you, because if you don't, you will they will expect you to constantly be on call, and your children will know that you're never really with them, that you're always, we have to work, we have to earn money. I get that. We're living in one of the most expensive cities in the world. We're living in a place where the food bill has tripled. So I understand that there are the pressures of having to work. What I'm inviting you to do is to put some boundaries in place. So have a rule: my work phone goes off at this time. Unless you're a doctor, your phone and you're on call, your phone doesn't need to be on all night, right? So keep those devices and screens and the kind of burdens of everyday life doesn't have to be an all-encompassing all the time thing. There can be boundaries around that. I have set times in the day where I put my phone somewhere and I leave it there. Because what will happen is there'll be notifications, people will be sending messages on Bhakti Kids Sangha, and I mean, it's just ongoing. So I actually have periods where I just discard my phone in my house so that I'm not constantly checking it, because it's easy to do. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. When I started Bhakti Kids Sangha, I noticed, God, I'm using my phone a lot. And that's why I brought this rule in. So certain points of the day, I have a rule. That's when I do my admin. That's when I check my messages. That's when I check notifications. That's when I reply to people. That's when I, send emails. And then it's usually before they get up. And then I have periods of the day where I just discard my phone altogether. I don't even keep it on my person because I know that we just can't help ourselves. This finger, there's a reason why we don't touch our beads with it, because it's this finger, right? Just discard it. Just put it somewhere where you can't get to it. I know people that actually have a safe and it's on a timer and they chuck their phones in there and you can't open it for the next couple of hours. And I think it's a fantastic idea. And it's something we can all do within reason with what our jobs are, outside of our work hours. Try and introduce some rules like that. Keeping devices away at meal times, cannot emphasize this enough. Meal times, try to eat together as much as you can. And if work schedules don't allow that, on the weekend, make sure meals are together. Turn your work phone off once you've finished your admin. I just covered that, so I won't dwell on that. Avoid scrolling on social media whilst putting children to bed or in the bath. Now, that's just not important for connection, but also for safety. Children have drowned in the bath because their parents are on Facebook. Go and Google it. It has happened in front of them. And they haven't noticed because they're in Facebook world, right? So again, this might be a really nice time where you say, right, after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, the phone goes away for a few hours. And that's when we do stories and bath time and bed. And there's your connection time. There's your quality connection time. You might have been at work all day, right? But you come home, you do your final admin, you get rid of the phone, and you focus on the bed and the bath. And you know what? Your child's going to appreciate that so, so much. So cultivating a mood of service, that you are serving a Vaishnava and holding their hand along the Bhakti marg or the Bhakti path. And that's what this whole slide was about, connection. You are ultimately, their relationship with Krishna is going to be up to them, right? It's down to their karma. It's down to their level of realization or where they get to in life. Some of that's going to be predetermined, yes, but you can still be a steward on that path. And I think Prabhupada, when we go back to our quotes at the beginning, emphasized this time and time again, that yes, we have karma and all of the rest of it, and we have our own natural tendencies, and some people might be a little bit more tamasic than others or whatever, but our responsibility as parents is still to be stewards on that path, to still hold their hand as they traverse that, chaotic sea of Kali, to be the lifeboat, to be the steward on that journey. And that was emphasized time and time again by Srila Prabhupada. Let's move to the next slide. So I've shared a couple of personal pictures here for connection, so you can connect to your children and serve Krishna all at once. When you create a Grihastha ashram at home, you can provide meaningful service to them and connect them to Krishna and serve together in this ashram. So a lot of times I see this idea of giving like a spiritual activity to children is like giving them a colouring in sheet that they kind of scribble on and then goes in the bin. I don't think that's meaningful service. And I've listened to lots of Mother Urmila's talks, and she time and time again mentions that as a bit of a pet peeve. that it's not meaningful service at all. So by meaningful service, it's like, what are they interested in? So my son's very interested in art. He's very creative. He's interested in language and linguistics, right? So I've connected him to Krishna through those things. I've used those mediums. I've kind of harnessed his nature and then interwoven that with services. And sometimes we push ourselves out of our comfort zones. None of us are natural book distributors, but we still have gone out together as a family, and we did it as a service to Prabhupada, but also as a bonding experience. All three of us, you'll see in these pictures, and we have distributed books. We might not distribute hundreds of books in a day. Like the maximum my kids can do is about 2 hours, 3 hours if it's a push. They can't be out for hours and hours. You have to think about, you've got to have snacks, you've got to have this, you've got to have that. Yeah, it's a bit of work, but it is so worth it. Like, it is so worth it. And you have to remember, this isn't forever. They're going to grow up, right? They're only little for this short space of time. So this extra work, this extra planning that kind of goes into all of this stuff, it's not forever. It's a short-term austerity for a long-term benefit, right? Not just for you, but for them and for their relationships with Prabhupada and Krishna as well. So I hope you liked these pictures. Like I said, we're not like the most successful book distributors. We haven't distributed thousands of books. It's the learning exercise that's going on here. It's the connection. I'll tell you a funny story. We went out on book distribution once. We set up outside a mall, and they came and kind of like the security from the mall came and kind of like challenged us, like why we were there and we didn't have permits and this and that. And look, I diffused the situation and I was just like, oh, I'm so sorry, we didn't know, I'll pack everything up and we'll leave. And the guy was like, you know what, like fine, like he could see that we'd made an honest mistake, and he was very non-confrontational about it. But my son afterwards in the car said to me, oh mum, that was so exciting. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, it was kind of a bit rebellious that we were there and we were doing book distribution there. And he said, and another thing that I learned was the way that you handled it. He was like, you didn't get angry, you didn't start preaching at him or anything like that. You just apologized and you were very humble. And he responded to you very positively because of the way that you had responded to him. And actually, it actually ended up meaning more people were coming over to look at the books as well when they saw this going on. But he thought the whole thing was really cool. So I would really, really get you to have a look at your child's nature and find some services that you think will link to that nature, whether it's book distribution, whether it's deity worship, whether it's creating decorations for the festivals, whether it's teaching the younger children, whatever their tendencies are. They might be gyanic, they might be creative, they might be whatever it is. Find something, they might just like to clean. My 2-year-old daughter loves to clean. My son loves to polish the maha brass, and that's meaningful service, as opposed to like giving them a sheet that they'll forget about and more than likely ends up in the bin. So I think I've made the point. Talking. So this is the second key. We're on talking. And this is a lovely photo of my husband and Lally when she was a bit younger there. But it's a beautiful kind of example of how we can weave talking into just day-to-day interaction, right? Just very normal interaction. So you can see we were actually at a pet store, and Lally really wanted to look at the fish. And so you can see that Lally and Dad are looking at the fish and they're counting the fish and they're talking about the colors. And, they may have even been talking about, these fish are alive. They are parts and parcels of Krishna. They have souls, yeah? Or, if they're not ready for that, or you don't want to go there, you could even start introducing some vocabulary. You could say, fish is machli in Hindi or Matsya in Sanskrit. You could start talking to them about the story of Matsya from the Dasha Avatar. Like, there is, just from this one picture, so many ways that you can weave in, and all of these keys go together. So there's connection through talking, right? And you can add linguistics, you can add languages, whatever language that you're introducing at home. And you can also introduce concepts, from the Bhagavatam and from Bhagavad Gita this way. So let's work through the slide. Talking and hearing go hand in hand, and we talk about hearing all the time. It's one of the 9 processes of devotional service, isn't it? Hearing, very, very important. So you can talk. So just as I said in that other slide, when we looked at all the 5 keys, they all relate to bhakti. Like those keys are from a modern day scientific study that came out very recently, but they all relate to bhakti, right? So talking and hearing go hand in hand. You can talk to your children before they are even born. So we touched on this at the beginning about how when the child is in the womb, they are hearing. They are hearing their parents' voices. They are hearing spiritual sound vibration, right? So we can do that even before they're born. And as I gave the example of Prahlad Maharaj, very famous example, I'm sure most of you know it. Prahlad Maharaj, the Devas wanted to kill his mother. And Narada Muni took his mother to his hermitage and was sharing discourses with her. And he was, he's one of the 12 Mahajans because of this. I mean, it's just the power of talking to children before they're even born is really quite potent. So your personal interaction can never be replaced by YouTube or video games. Now, I'm going to be honest with you here. I am extremely triggered. I don't know what other word to use by video games. I have heard so many excuses from parents as to why they give their children video games, and they are all fallacies. Oh, they're not violent. Doesn't matter. The people who create video games are the same people who create gambling apps. When you play video games, whether they're violent or not, the same chemicals are released in your brain as illegal drugs. So we have the 4 regulative principles, right? We say no intoxication, right? So that means no alcohol, no illicit drugs, no illegal drugs, not even caffeine. Some people won't even eat chocolate because they're worried about the intoxication element. But you'll quite happily give your children video games. I mean, you may as well just give them intoxication because that's what it is. It's literally doing the same thing. And if you're telling yourself something different, it's a fallacy. And again, I know devotee parents, second initiation, supposed to be Brahmins, their children are sitting on game consoles for hours and hours and hours, playing war games, playing games where, in Grand Theft Auto, you earn points by slapping prostitutes. Is this in keeping with Vaishnava philosophy? Is this going to help your children connect to Krishna? Is this going to help your kids at school? The answer is no, right? And it actually is very stunting for the child's development. So if I could impress upon you one thing, it would be to get rid of that games console. Get rid of it. If you're scared your child's going to cry, let them cry. They'll forget about it soon enough. We do have a TV, but it's restricted, right? I'm just being completely honest about what we have in our house. I know some people don't have even TV. We do have a TV, but it's restricted. Some YouTube gets watched, but again, it's restricted. And there's some really beautiful Krishna conscious YouTube channels for children. There's a YouTube podcast by Sharma Saki, Devi Dasi, which is all the pastimes of Krishna, beautifully retold in an audio format. Vrinda Kishori, Krishna Kids by Andrea Suarez. I mean, there are some beautiful channels. Those are the things my kids access. We don't let them watch toy unwrapping videos and things like that. We avoid all of those things. So don't be afraid to say no to these things. It's very easy to try and be the child's friend and say, oh, well, all the other kids have them, so I kind of have to give in. No, you don't. You don't have to give in. You are the parent. You are the one who has this huge, as we looked at from Prabhupada's quotes, responsibility to these children for their spiritual, mental, and physical welfare. And, they're not just psychologically damaging. They can be physically damaging. I remember in lockdown reading about a young boy, 21, died from blood clots in his legs because he was gaming. And he had been a healthy boy. He'd been playing soccer. He was actually coaching a youth soccer team. And when the COVID lockdown happened, he became very, very depressed. No kind of community. And so he sat behind his games console and he died from blood clots in his legs. And he died in his chair in front of his shrine, his games console. I would approach these with caution, extreme caution, and really, really ask some very deep questions about why you're giving it. Because you might tell yourself that you're giving it because, oh, they need to learn how to use technology. Oh, they need this and that. No, no, no. You're giving it to them because you want them to be distracted for a time so you can get something done. And it's not the way. There are so many other ways that you can do that that aren't as destructive as games consoles. I think I've made the point. Even when your child is too young to talk back, talking to them deepens your connection and helps them to begin to understand language and the world around them. So again, like we talked about kids, when they're really young, they look like they're kind of just sitting there, not much is happening. But like we said, it was like 1 million neurons a second being connected. So just because they can't respond yet, both my children were early talkers because I constantly spoke to them. Constantly. I'd walk around the supermarket and be like, this is a banana, this is an orange. And then when I started learning Sanskrit, I started telling, this is palam fruit, right? Palam, pale, palani. Even start doing some grammar. One fruits, two fruits, many fruits. I mean, you can really go for it. There's so much you can do. Children of all ages love stories and songs. And in fact, so do adults. They all love stories and songs. So use that. Use stories and songs. My kids, when they're in the bath, they love Mahatma Prabhu's songs. They have specific kirtans and bhajans that they like. Um, there's even Krishna conscious rap music. My son likes Krishna conscious rap music. He loves 10 Ducats. There's a few other people as well that produce like MC Yogi and people like that produce this kind of contemporary Krishna conscious music. He loves those. I mean, these things are really, really, really important to a child's development. And you can make like going to bed and bath time even more exciting and deepen that connection and introduce talking and vocabulary through stories and songs. So I've given some practical examples here. So bath time sing along, singing songs at bath. My children like Mahatma Das's children's songs, so we just covered that. When grocery shopping, you can show your children the different items and talk about them. If you're introducing another language, this is a great time to introduce vocabulary. So, like I said, I'd go to the supermarket, I'd show them the fruits and the vegetables. You can talk about numbers, you can talk about colors, you can talk about, like I said, the Sanskrit grammar, one fruit, palam, pale, palani. Yeah. One fruits, two fruits, many fruits. Like you're starting to teach them about shabdas, like it, and you don't have to tell them that. So you're not like, right now I'm going to talk to you about, no, just do it. Just show them things and they will love it. They will absolutely love it. I see a lot when I go out, kids in prams, like this, or they're in the shopping trolley and they're like this. And in fact, the other day we were in the supermarket and Lally saw another little girl and she really wanted to like wave to her and say hello. And then when she got the girl's attention, the girl screams because for a second she was distracted from the beloved screen. And I thought, oh my God, I just, you know what? I couldn't help but judge that parent. I'm sorry. Please, Krishna, help my judging heart. But it was just like, I thought that poor kid, like, talk to them, say I'm getting milk, and with the milk we're going to do this and this. It actually really doesn't require that much effort, and it actually makes you feel good. Trust me, it does. Encourage your child to point out letters they recognize on signs around them and identify shapes and colors. Name sounds. Use descriptive language. Use melodic singing, voice inflections when storytelling or reading a book. So when you're reading them a book, don't just be like, oh, and then one day Krishna, like actually make it exciting, bring it alive. You will have so much fun doing that. Like it's, really have fun with this. And again, what speaks to your nature, what speaks to their nature, use those things, incorporate those things. use that as your the fuel to your fire for this, because it will be different for every family. Some children are more reserved. Some children like to have more naps and quiet time. Some children are more outgoing, and the last thing they want to do is rest. So really sort of think about what will work for your child and what will work for you. Another thing that I've noticed that kind of works in as a modern day barrier between connection and talking is headphones. So here in Australia, I will go out for walks or when I go to the supermarket, and all of the parents have their children in prams facing away from them, usually with a sheet over the top. I mean, that's a whole nother topic in 40-degree heat with a sheet over the top. I mean, it's just crazy. But they all have headphones in. So how can I mean, if I went out with you and we went for a walk together and I had headphones in and I was listening to music and I wasn't looking at you, how much connection and talking do you think would happen? So I would really, really get you to think about the use of headphones and when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. I'm not saying never listen to music. If they're asleep and you can see them and there's no sheet over their head and you can see that they're asleep, sure, put some music on, put a podcast on, but if they're awake and they're looking around, leave the headphones and be like, oh, look, there's a tree. Tree is vrikshaha in Sanskrit. You know, oh, look at the little cuckoo birds in the tree, or something like that. Or look at the little squirrel running up the tree. See how the squirrel scurries up the tree. See how you're introducing language all the time, and it's really, really simple and doesn't cost anything. And all it requires is that you make some simple changes and adjustments to the way that you do things. And hopefully this seminar will give you some ideas on how to do that. So playing, this has got to be one of my favorite absolute favorite topics to talk about of all time because Krishna is the master of play. We see so many wonderful pastimes of Krishna and his friends playing and pulling pranks, stealing butter, wrestling, planting pearls. There are so many examples of play in the Bhagavatam. Not just with the kids, the adults get involved too. Dressing up as each other, like all sorts. I mean, there's just Krishna is a playful god. He's literally pulling pranks on people and stealing butter and playing, like literally direct. There's no other term that you could use other than playing. He's playful, and practicing Krishna conscious should be playful, especially for children. Especially for children. I would say even there should be an element for adults as well of playful inquiry and playfulness and lightness, but also especially for children. So have a look around your house. Have a look at what toys, books, games, and puzzles that you have at home. And are they reflecting Krishna conscious values? Are they reflecting Krishna conscious paradigms? I would get you to really, really look at that, because do not underestimate the power that those things translate to our children. Because, as we talked about, those first years, they're very important developmentally. So, the things that they play with, the things that they see, the things that they hear are going to have a major impact on them. So the children need to have toys. We can see examples all around me, like, what kind of books have you got? Have you got books about Krishna? Have you got toys? Have you got toys that, you know, connect your children to Krishna? Or have they got superficial superheroes, like Spider-Man and Batman or whatever? Like, really, really look at these things, because it's super, super important, right? So there's a really broad variety, and it's actually getting better. Like in the last year or so, even like that short amount of time, there are so many more books, games, and puzzles available for devotee children. And if you are wanting to know more about that, take a look on Bhakti Kids Sangha, because I review a lot of them and I share information at least on how to get a lot of these things. And be prepared to invest a little. Okay, you might have to invest a little money in that and in a few books and a few games. It's going to be worth it in the long run, okay? So on Bhakti Kids Sangha, I teach a lot of craft videos, how to make toys. So even if you cannot access certain things, or you live in a place where it's really, really hard to get things delivered, or there's no Amazon, or shipping's really expensive or something like that, or you just don't have the budget, try making some. You can buy like little blank wooden toys off Amazon that you can paint yourself for like $20. I made some dolls for my kids, just using felt and fabric. um I made this doll. So you can make your own things. You don't even have to buy anything if you don't want to. Interactive over passive. So ditch the screens and opt for interactive, like using dolls, puppets, and board games. So again, we have screens in our house. I have a TV. They do watch some Krishna conscious YouTube. I mentioned some channels earlier that are really, really good Krishna conscious channels that are made by wonderful Matajis, and they're very, very clever. There's audio only components on their channels. So there's like the storytelling podcast is all audio. Vrinda Kishore has Bhagavatam, really beautiful audio Bhagavatam that she did with her daughter, lessons. So you don't have to even have the screen in front of them where they're watching the screen. You can use it like an audio book. So interactive means are always going to be better than passive means. So dolls, puppets, toys, playmats, all of those things, puzzles, all of those things are going to be better than giving screens. Of course, I understand, like, when I'm driving for a long drive, I'll put on Vrinda Kishore's Bhagavatam. I'll put on Sharma Saki's audio storytelling podcast in the car and things like that. Sometimes if it's bath time and I'm really tired and I don't want to do all the songs and talking, I'll put on one of those audiobooks. They're very useful. It's just how we use things and to what extent and what our intention is. What I have an issue with, and what I see devotee, non-devotee, all parents doing, is giving screens, giving phones, giving iPads to keep their children quiet. And that's just, stops connection, stops talking, stops playing. It affects all these keys. And there are no healthy outcomes. So I would really invite you to review the screen use and the reliance on the phones, and it's never too late to change these things. Never too late to change. So when I was a non-devotee and Krishna Balaram was young, he used screens a lot more. And then when I realized how dangerous they were, I changed things. And look, yes, it was hard in the beginning. Of course it was. But it turned around very, very quickly. And he now uses his time in much better, more productive ways. So don't be afraid to make the change. Like I said, you can't always be a best friend. Sometimes you have to be the one that stands up for what's right. So playing, super, super important. Don't be afraid to play with them. It's not silly. It can actually be really uplifting for you. It can actually be really good for your bhakti, when you play with them. So and like we see, Krishna literally exemplifies play for us very, very, very nicely in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. Read the Krishna books. So many beautiful, playful pastimes. So I've got some examples here of my kids playing. So my daughter here in the first picture on the left is hosting a tea party. Such a really standard kids game, but look who she's serving. She's serving Krishna tea and cake. And I think the doll next to Krishna there is supposed to be Radharani, actually. So she's using her imagination. She found that doll, it reminds her of Radharani. That's Radharani now. I made that doll of Krishna. They're having a tea party. She's serving them tea and cake. She's treating them as a friend, as a person. This is the opposite of impersonalist philosophy, and we can start teaching it to our children now through play, right? Mayavadi philosophy is incredibly strong. It's all pervading. A lot of this kind of new age spiritual philosophy, for want of a better word, that gets propounded these days is like this kind of impersonalist philosophy. So really, really important to emphasize the ethics of personalism, and you can do it through play. A child that age is not going to be able to read the Bhagavatam. right? So how do we get those messages across? Through stories, through songs, through connecting with them, and through play. So playing also builds your fine and gross motor skills, your sense of identity, and builds empathy as well. So this idea that these other personalities and they have feelings, and my daughter Lally loves playing with dolls. I've got so many dolls. It's a good job. I like making dolls and she likes playing with dolls. So this is a good relationship. We can use forms of play like dolls, puppets, songs, and dioramas to connect our kids to Krishna, as well as learning language, maths, colors, and shapes. So playing, yes, can be used to teach academics as well, not just, the philosophy of bhakti or personalist philosophy or treating Krishna as a friend, but actually all of those other things as well that we have to learn, we can learn through playing. And, I want to make a little point here. I have an Indian background. Right? I'm just going to say that right off the bat. And I have observed in Indian culture that there is so much emphasis on academics. There's so much emphasis on grades and study. And there's almost like, I'll give you an example. I was at a program and I was kind of having a very friendly debate with a lovely father who I have a lot of respect for. He's a Sanskritist, actually. But he made a very interesting, very telling, and I think a very cultural comment. He said to me, I know what's dumbing children down these days. And I was like, oh, what? I was hoping he was going to say screens. And he said toys and playing. And that kind of like made me a bit sad. I didn't go in on a big like crusade, but I did try and sort of hint that maybe the screens were somewhat more to blame. But he felt that toys and playing was what was dumbing children down. And actually, playing is integral to development. It is. And in fact, even adults should engage in just pointless play. There's no point to it. It's not going to make you money. It's not going to bring you food. It's not going to bring you wealth or anything like that. It's not going to help with your health, or you do it because it feels nice, because it feels good. Like for me, like sewing is my play. That's what I like doing, and making my learning aids and things like that. That's my kind of like pointless play, if you like. It's very easy to think that, oh, if I give my children toys, will it dumb them down? No, it will do the opposite. It will ignite their imagination. It will really get them it will really get their brains going. It will really get them thinking. It will start building the muscles in their hands as they manipulate things, which they will need for writing when they get older. So many kids, they can't hold a pen or scissors when they get to school, and it's because they haven't built up those fine motor skills. So playing is really, really important. And I'm really speaking to the Indian parents here because I have noticed that they will tend to favor academics over, and then they will want to put all their money into that too. So it's all about financing. They want their kids here, or they want their kids to go to selective schools. So they'll spend loads of money on tutors, loads of money on courses. But if you ask them to spend $25 on a Krishna conscious book, they look at you like you're mad, right? And that's very, very telling, where we put our money, right? And where we put our Lakshmis, where our priorities are. So I really want to invite you, if you're watching this and you have those kind of quite atypical kind of cultural beliefs, that's okay. You learn them from your parents, but you can break that cycle. Spend the $25 on the book. Get your kids the Krishna conscious book. So many Indian kids I've done craft classes with, their parents tell me they have zero craft materials at home. I'm like, oh, can you get them to bring this in? Oh, we don't have that stuff. Here in Australia, the government gives you money for art materials so that every child, because even the government identifies how important creativity and play is. So they have active kids vouchers, they have creative kids vouchers. If you're watching this and you're in Australia, you are entitled to these vouchers. So to say that you can't send your child with markers and glue sticks because you don't have them is frankly laziness, because the government's literally paying for it for you. If you go and get the voucher, you'll be able to buy the required things, and your children need them, right? Or maybe you just weren't aware. laziness is a bit of a strong word. Maybe you just weren't aware, but you're aware now. So just jump onto Services New South Wales, get your voucher, get some kit, get some art classes happening. You will be surprised at how well that feeds into the academia. Right, that was just a little aside, but I really kind of wanted to emphasize that because it's something that I've observed, having I've assisted in a lot of classes. I assisted in a class on Mother's Day, and all the children were asked to bring in some things because they were going to make a mandala of their mother. So they were asked to bring in a photo of them and their mum. And I mean, most of the things have been provided. The base for the mandala, all the paintings, all the brush, everything was there. I had brought the paint and the brushes because I knew that the kids wouldn't bring those things. And all they were asked to do was to bring in a photo, and literally my son and about two other kids brought the photo in, and none of the other kids did. So parents, we need your help. We really, really need you to be engaged with us when we run these services. And if you're struggling to access equipment, tell us. We might be able to help you. You might not know about the vouchers. We'll be able to help you with that. So really, really think about that. Really, really think about how play and creativity is actually it's just as important as academia. It's just as important as the grades, and will actually elevate those things when you allow play and creativity, especially in these early years, these formative years of 0 to 6. Very, very important. So let's move on to the next slide. I think I've gone on long enough. So the top photo is the children of ISKCON Detroit. They've put on a puppet show from Chaitanya Charitamrita. That is wonderful. Look at that. Really simple puppets. Look how simple the puppets are. They're like paper on kebab sticks, wooden kebab sticks. A few of them are wearing some masks and things. I think it was Chaitanya in the forest when all the animals start dancing and singing the holy name. It's really, really sweet. And look how happy they are. Like, didn't take much, didn't take expensive equipment, didn't require expensive equipment and lots of planning. I mean, look at it. And it's so, so beautiful. Love the photo on the right. That's my son Krishna Balaram, and he is playing Krishna, and that's little Chitra as Mother Yashoda. And look at them. That is Mother Yashoda and Krishna. Look at the looks on their faces. Mother Yashoda, literally, she has that naughty Krishna look. And then look at Krishna. He's like so cheeky and just submitting to Mother Yashoda's love. So that's why I put that picture in there, because I really wanted to kind of show you guys how powerful play and like role playing and puppets and really, really simple things can be very impactful on the children. A healthy home. So we are moving towards the end of our keys. I hope you've enjoyed so far and that you've got ideas and takeaways. Now we're going to talk about a healthy home, and this directly, in my mind, I translate this as the Grihastha ashram. So a healthy home, otherwise known as the Grihastha ashram, it's in our scriptures. So our scriptures explain to us. We don't need modern science, we don't need studies to tell us about how important a healthy home is. So try and keep it clean and organized with a routine. Children really do benefit, and most children, not non-dependent on nature, really thrive under routine and knowing what's happening. Consistency in routines and parenting. Now, this can sometimes be a challenge if you're in a situation where, and lots of people are, where you might be co-parenting with someone else. If you are co-parenting and you're not living in the same place, as much as you possibly can, try and have consistency. It's going to be really, really difficult if one parent is, say, restrictive on sweets, restrictive on screens, and then when they go to the other parent's house, it's like, well, you can play PlayStation for as long as you like and eat chocolates all day long. I mean, the child's obviously going to want to go there more, aren't they? Because children are less sense controlled than we are. I mean, that's not a bad thing. That's just a fact. So of course they're going to want to go where life is easy, where they get as many sense pleasures as they can get. So I would really invite you, if you are co-parenting, and you know what, don't feel bad. Lots of people are in that situation. That you can be united in your co-parenting as much as you possibly can in terms of diet, screens, all of those things, really fundamental things, that would be very, very helpful for the children because they need that consistency. Violence free with a safe atmosphere. I mean, that goes without saying. Who wants to live in an environment where there's domestic violence? Even, you know, maybe not physical violence, but even if there's an air of aggression or shouting or swearing or a feeling of animosity or so. Look, when you live in a house, there's always going to be disagreements. Of course, there is. You know, me and my husband have disagreements. It's about maintaining a safe atmosphere that's free of violence. That should be the mood. With Krishna in the center. So, really encourage you, if you haven't already, if you're watching this and you've watched this far, chances are you're a full-time devotee and you already have an altar. But if you don't, set one up, and you don't need to have deities as such. If you don't have deities, photos of the acharyas and Krishna will do just fine. You know, picture of, you know, the Vrindavan deities or Mayapur deities, whichever deities resonate with you, frame those pictures and make a little altar. Let your children offer a small arti, even if it's just incense, flowers, and, you know, a few articles, you know, not a full arty. Like, you could start so small and it could build over time, right? So my kids have their own deities. They have Laddu Gopal deities that they worship. They also help to worship the main deities in the house. And, you know, I used a picture of my family, but I'm not trying to say that we're like the perfect example of the Grihastha ashram at all. I only used it because it's a really nice picture of Lali before her Mundan ceremony. And you can see the deities in the altar in the background. And it was just before she had her first haircut, samskara. So I just thought it was a nice picture. I'm not trying to say that the family's perfect or that we always get it right. You know, that's impossible, but we do try. And the intention is there. And me and my husband, as much as possible, try to be consistent with each other. And, you know, that doesn't always happen. He's a bit more authoritarian. He's a bit more rigid. I'm a bit more like, okay, I'm going to pick something that I'm going to work on with the kids and just hone in on that and let some other things go. I have a little bit of a different tack. So, it, but with fundamental things like, you know, we're in agreement with the video games. He doesn't like give our kids video games when I'm not here or something. Do you know what I mean? We're united on that. We're united in the fact that our children are going to be vegetarian. You know, all these really fundamental things. Of course, you can't be completely the same. There are going to be nuances. Like I said, he is more authoritarian, and arguably the father should be. You know, arguably the father should be more authoritarian, that there should be a little bit of, you know, from the children of, okay, you know, like, okay, for example, my toddler at the moment is in a hitting phase. If you've ever had a toddler, you will know that they love to hit, scratch, and bite, and it's perfectly normal and developmental. But when dad's around, she gets very sheepish. She'll slap me, and then she'll be like, did my dad see me? Not because he's going to come and smack or anything like that. He doesn't do that, but because she knows that dad is authoritative and that he will be very unimpressed by that behavior. And you can convey that through your expression and your tone. You don't have to resort to physical punishments. So train older children in how to care for the deities so that you have help when looking after small children. So this is something that I did when I was pregnant with Lally. I taught my son how to care for the deities because I knew that when the baby came, I wasn't always going to be Suchi. I wasn't always going to have the time. So he can dress them, he can do the arty, he can polish the brass, he can actually do most of it because I trained him. And he enjoyed it, and he actually likes doing deity worship. So that works very, very well. But, you know, again, connect them with the sadhana. Do it with them. Don't ostracize your children from the spiritual practices. Involve them as much as possible. You know, if you have young children, you're changing nappies all the time and you're breastfeeding and you're not suchi, train the older children to help you with these things. It's going to be empowering for them and it's going to lighten the load on you. Think very carefully about what foods the children are eating. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, my children only eat prasadam. You know, yeah, but cookies can be prasadam. You know, really, really think about what's in your child's lunchbox. And, you know, I'll be honest, this happened to us recently. My son went to a swimming carnival and there was a shop there, you know, because you can't always be there. You can't always be in control. And he had pocket money and he bought a drink that I don't like. I would rather that a child didn't drink, right? Wasn't a fizzy drink that was caffeinated, but it was like a it was like one of those electrolyte drinks that adults drink after workouts, but they're not really suitable for children and they're full of artificial colors. And so you have to be wary of that. Talk to your children, that they can be in situations where there might be a canteen at the school or they're at spring carnival or something like that. And there's a canteen. Talk to them about what is appropriate for them to buy or, or or what you send them with. What are you sending them with? What's in there? Children who are already a little bit hyperactive are going to be exacerbated by sugar and colors. So that might be something you want to bear in mind as well. So just have a think. This is all of these things, all of these keys are are invites to meditate on and reflect and make small, manageable changes. It's not about waking up tomorrow going, right, we're going to be doing this, this, and this. Don't make it hard, right? Because then you're going to struggle because you've given yourself like an incredibly high bar. Start small. Go right. Okay. For the next month, I'm going to make these adjustments. I'm going to work on my talking connection. Then next month, I'm going to add a few more things. I'm going to start addressing the food or something like that. Like make it manageable. Don't try and make it hard for yourself. Okay. Play together. It builds connection and relieves stress. Absolutely encourage you to play with your kids. Dress up with them and play out the leelas. You know, I mean, I am like the most unsporty person, but I'll play cricket with my son or whatever it is. Come down to their level once in a while. They really like that. And then they see you as relatable. And then they're much more likely to listen to you when you impose restrictions such as screens, drinks, chocolates, whatever else it is. Festivals are a great way to bring children together. Why not host a family program to enjoy, um, as well as the temple celebration? So we like to have our own version of the festivals at home. We started this during COVID and we've kind of carried it on because it's actually really nice to have your own Julan Yatra, really nice to have your own Ratha Yatra. Even if you just have a small cart, kids cart, and you put the dolls on it and they drag it round the garden, it's actually and you'll notice in some of the earlier slides when we looked at Prabhupada, I had that beautiful photo of Prabhupada doing Ratha Yatra as a child with the children of the community. And that wasn't an accident. That was there deliberately because that is where our example is coming from, right? This whole seminar was based on Sastra and Prabhupada's quotes, and that's why those pictures were there in the beginning and the quotes were there. Make sure everyone in the family is getting sufficient physical activity. I think that's a little bit of a no-brainer, but I think as we advance into Kali Yuga, there is more and more sedentary behavior, more and more like sitting behind screens and, playing. All of those things are just compounding. I was watching something the other day about obese children. So in the UK, if your child's obese, it's not the same everywhere in the world. It's actually classed as child abuse because you allowed your child to get like that. You were the one that bought the food. You put the food on their plate. And there was a girl there who had to have 8 of her milk teeth surgically removed because they were so decayed. And watching her go through the pain post-surgery, I just thought, as a parent, how can you stand there and let that happen to your child? Now, I know that sounds awfully judgmental, but that child was at a really progressed stage of obesity, and all of her teeth had to be surgically removed because they were so rotten to their absolute core. That is negligence. There's no way around that. And that was an example from outside of ISKCON, but what I'm saying is that should be a bit of a wake up call for the rest of us. Make sure they're brushing their teeth. Make sure they're going for their checkups. Make sure you're checking the teeth regularly. If you're in Australia, Medicare gives you an allowance so that you can go and get your children's teeth checked regularly. Okay, it's not a lot, but it's some, right? So you can get the teeth checked regularly. So really maintain their physical health, because guess what? That physical body has to last you right up into adulthood, and you are going to need that body when you're doing service. You want to go out on Harinam, you're going to need your physical body to take you there. You want to go out on book distribution, you need your physical body to take you there. And it's much easier when you have all your own teeth and you're in a relatively healthy condition. So yoga is a really, really great exercise for young kids because it is low impact. There's no slamming of the joints. It's very, very unlikely that they'll injure themselves. And a great way of maintaining their kind of physical health. And it's really good because it builds all the muscles to support the skeletal system so that they'll have good posture as well. So another thing that kids are battling with now is postural issues. So I don't know if you've seen, but they've actually found that children now, some children are actually developing an extra bone in the back of their neck. Yeah. So, you've got your neck that joins up into your cranium, and there's an extra bone at the back because everyone's doing this, right? So even the way that the bones are forming are changing in children due to screen use. So look, chances are, if you're in the modern world, your child's going to be using a screen at some point, especially for school. A lot of schools now require that you have laptops and iPads and all of this stuff. So counter that with yoga because, like I said, it will make the muscles nice and strong to support the skeletal system, and it will encourage good posture. And that posture can be maintained because the muscles are strong around the bones. As like think of it as like scaffolding. It's the scaffolding around the scaffolding to add that reinforcement. I think I've made that point, but I would really invite you to look into those avenues. And look, there's free yoga classes on Bhakti Kids Sangha, and I'm going to be adding more as well. So again, don't think, oh, I don't have the money, or there's heaps of free kids yoga on YouTube. Just supervise them if they're not in a class. Yeah, do it with them. Me and my son do yoga together. Me and my husband do yoga together. When I was teaching yoga classes before I had Lally, my husband used to come to my classes and participate as a student. So it can be like, as I said before, all of these keys are connected. It can actually be a really good way of connecting by doing yoga together, physical postural yoga, and that's going to enforce the physical health. So let's move on to the next slide, the Grihastha ashram. So there's 4 ashrams, right? And families and children live and serve in the Grihastha ashram. What are the responsibilities and expectations of devotees living in this ashram? So I kind of wanted to revisit, I'm sure most of you know this, what are the basic paradigms of the Grihastha ashram? So we've got these 4 ashrams, and we hear a lot about, sannyasis and renounced people in the renounced order and what their kind of roles and responsibilities are and what the limitations are. They can't earn money. I mean, real Vedic sannyasis couldn't even stay in one place for more than 3 days unless it was the rainy season. They had to constantly move around, and they weren't supposed to travel over water or wear a watch or anything. There was all these kind of rules. And yes, they have modernized, but there's like fundamental rules. They're not supposed to earn money. They're not supposed to be in relationships. They're not supposed to have dependent children and all of this kind of thing. So the Grihastha ashram is the ashram we're focusing on today because this is the ashram of children and families. And as I said in our first few slides, I'd really love to invite you to focus on this as an ashram, as a temple, and see the devotees in your temple as like, imagine you're like the temple president and they're your congregation members and you have to take care of them and make sure that all their needs are fulfilled. It's a bit like that, right? So the kind of characteristics, if you like, of the Grihastha ashram are you earn money. So you're allowed to earn money, have an intimate relationship with your husband and wife according to the 4 regulative principles. So you have a sex life to produce children, right? That's how your children came to be. That's not there in Vanaprastha. That's not there in the renounced order. This is the Grihastha ashram, right? To perform sacrifice and observe religious rituals. So we see that when we do yajna. We see that when we do the mundan samskar for our kids, or the first grains, or whatever it is, or we go for arti, like as grihastas, that's what we're doing. To protect and nourish family members, namely wife, children, and elders. Very important. Very, very important, right? To protect and nourish family members. It doesn't say to control or to subordinate. And I really like that there's the addition of elders because I do have a concern about the elders of ISKCON and the people in Vanaprastha and how they get treated and cared for. They're almost like the children. They're kind of like the afterthought, and these are people that have like spent their entire life in service, and they're kind of like an afterthought. So part of the Grihastha ashram is caring for the elders in our community and in our families, to teach children spiritual values, to give in charity, to feed renounced people, the poor and animals. So me and my kids, we used to try and serve the brahmacharis in the temple. We used to try and make sure that they had things that they needed. Like we used to make them like hygiene packs so that they had like toothbrushes and toothpaste and soap and razors and things so that they could be suchi. And I'd make them like individual wash bags for each one and things like that. So we're supposed to be supporting them. And what's happened is in Kali Yuga is it's such a broken society that we actually have a situation where brahmacharis are working. Yeah. I'm not going to name temples, but there are temples where the brahmacharis are working. And that's because the grihastas aren't supporting them. Yeah, there's a broken system happening here where the brahmacharis, the renounced people, are in the temple, but the temple can't run. Right, so the grihastas are not supporting them, and so they're having to go out and work, and that's like a whole another seminar in itself why that's a problem. So these are the basic characteristics of the grihastha ashram. You're allowed to earn money, right? You're allowed to handle money, and own property and have a job, and then you can have a spouse, you can have a wife and a husband. You have sex to produce children, and then you raise those children with spiritual values, and you take care of your parents. And the picture here is actually of mine and my husband's wedding. That's our pictures. I just thought I'd use that as a really nice it was a nice picture to represent the Grihastha ashram and this kind of coming together and working together in this kind of balance that's required between the partners, the husband and wife, or the parents. That's required here. So a healthy home. When I hear a healthy home, I think of the Grihastha ashram, and that if we imbibe this, then that's a healthy home. Like we have a healthy home automatically if we cultivate our Grihastha ashram, cultivate the altar, raising the children with the spiritual values, incorporating our sadhana with our children. All of those things are part of cultivating our Grihastha ashram. And the last one, I think it's the last one, is community. And why is community so important? Because this platform is called Bhakti Kids Sangha. It's about the Sangha of parents and their families. And you will hear a very sort of cheesy saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it's actually true. From an early age, you can include children in the wider community. Child-centered festivals like Kids Ratha Yatra, Kids Janmastami, where the kids do the services. They have child-friendly prasadam, because very, very often I go to the temple and the prasadam is way too hot for the children. And the adults play a supporting role. Really, really important. And actually, I love the kids' festivals. I mean, you probably would have guessed that. Kids Janmastami was really interesting. So the adults find it very, very difficult to play a supporting role, I have noticed. They can't just step back and let it be a kids' day. So we had a situation where we had really wonderful, the devotees had gone all out to make this wonderful children's prasadam, right? And they'd made all this beautiful homemade pizza and sweets and pastas, and it was just like all stuff kids love, right? I mean, probably not the healthiest, but it was Kids Janmastami. It's a special celebration, right? And they made an announcement that all the kids were supposed to be fed first. And what do you think happened? You guessed it, all the parents rushed to the front, crushed the children, literally. My son got literally punched in the head by some Mataji who was trying to get to the front of the queue. And they could just not take a step back and let the kids go first. That's a problem. And this is what I mean by when I say I watch a play and I see these kind of opinions being put out there that like non-devotees are, bad parents, and devotees parents are just wonderful with kids and they're so caring and they're so perfect. It's just a fallacy. I mean, that was a prime example, where they were serving the prasadam and they'd even gone to the effort to say, please, can you let the children be the priority for the kids' prasadam and let them be fed first? And none of like the adults literally like rushed and they were saying like kids first, kid first. They were just ignoring it completely and just rammed in there. And then, like I said, this one woman was so like she literally just was like lying on my son in the prasadam queue, and he was crying. He was literally crying because he's a sensitive child and he's quite a small child, and he was getting crushed and he was crying. And when I sort of said to her, look, Mataji, you're crushing my son, she got very angry at me and she was like, oh, who are you, festival devotee, to come and tell me, I'm here every day doing service? And I was just like, is it the behavior of a Vaishnava to rush and take the kids prasadam before they get to the queue and then crush them on the way? I don't know if it is. I'm not trying to um criticize an individual here. I'm trying to be honest about what I observe as the kind of view of children in the temple, and invite the viewers, whoever you may be watching this, to think about how you could contribute to maybe improving that situation rather than compounding it. So meaningful service according to age, ability, and nature. We've talked about that throughout this topic, throughout this whole seminar. Take a look around. How child-friendly are the shared community spaces where you live? Are there, or the temple? Are there change facilities, high chairs in the prasadam hall, a place for children to play safely? And if not, why? And what could be done to improve things? So we have a situation here where there is literally nowhere that you can change a child's nappy. Nowhere, because the women's toilet is extremely small. There's no change table, and there's no high chairs. And there's no outdoor space because it's kind of a city area where there's not much open outdoor space. So there's like a little car park that the children play with, which is completely dangerous. I don't know how a child hasn't been run over yet already, because you've got devotees like reversing out and the kids are like playing handball right there. So look, in some temples that can't be helped. Like with our temple, the temple is where it is. There is no other space. But my point is, okay, we can't do anything about that, right? That temple is on the site that it's on. It's got the space that it's got, and the temple authorities can't do much about that. But when we're purchasing new land and we're looking at founding new temples and starting new projects, we could consider these things. We could think about, is there a space for Matajis to breastfeed? Is there a change room, parents' room? Are there going to be high chairs? Is there going to be a play area for the kids to play with that's fenced off and safe? When picking a new site, you could consider all those things. And I don't think that's happening. I don't think that that's necessarily happening when we are planning our new sites, which is why I wanted to mention this, because I wasn't trying to sort of rip down my own local temple and be like, there's no playground. They literally don't have space for a playground. There would be nowhere to put it. It's just that I'm kind of trying to start the conversation that for future planning, it's something that we could think about and that the community could ask for and push for and emphasize. Because sometimes management isn't always aware. They need us to come and say, avoid excluding the children or viewing them as disruptive or a nuisance. If they're disturbing the Sunday feast class, it is most likely because they are unengaged. Yeah. I mean, this is just something I have witnessed time. I've actually sat in a class where someone has just gone, oh my God, like in the middle of the class, it's being recorded, it's being live streamed on Mayapur TV. Why are these kids in here? They should be somewhere else. No, they shouldn't, actually, right? They shouldn't. They should be getting darshan of the deities and Srila Prabhupada just like everybody else. And we have to make the adjustments. We have to be the ones to care and make the adjustments. And we can't expect them to, okay? So we need a little bit of a change in attitude here, right? Little bit of a shift in our own attitude about how we view the children. And if they are being a nuisance, why? One thing, and again, I've observed, particularly with devotee parents, particularly with the Indian devotee parents, is they expect their children to behave like little adults. They go to like a 2 hour seminar. They bring their kids. They don't bring them any snacks, no toys, no coloring in books, nothing. And they expect them to sit there. And then when they're disruptive, they get angry. I've got news for you. A kid under 5 is not going to sit for 2 hours quietly for you or for anyone or for any Maharaj. They're just not. Bring a little box of Lego, bring some colouring in books, bring some healthy snacks. I always carry I've got like these really nice bento box lunch boxes that are all nice and segmented, has a little slot for a fork, and I carry them in there. I've got fruit all cut up and prepared and ready for them to eat that they can eat themselves. They don't need help, right? Little sandwiches cut up, little cheese sandwiches or something like that, whatever they like, carrot sticks and hummus and things like that. Um, Carry those healthy snacks, because when children are hungry, they are more likely to be disruptive. When they are bored, they are most likely to be disruptive. So counter that, be a little bit organized. Carry some things, carry like a couple of their favorite books, a couple of their favorite toys. It does mean you have to be a bit organized and plan ahead, but I have faith in you. You can do it, right? Just try it and notice how different it is the next time you go to the temple. I have just seen so many examples where children have been sitting in temples and they're so bored and they're getting disruptive, and either the person leading the class gets angry or the parent gets angry or both. And it's completely avoidable. And it just requires a little bit of planning from you, and for you to dial down your expectations of your children for a moment and remember that they are children. They're not adults, and they're not going to sit there quietly for you for a couple of hours and just sit there. I mean, that's just it in a nutshell. They're not. So bring some things. What can be done to avoid such disruption? Is there a way the children could be welcomed and engaged while the parents attend class? So when I met my husband, he was going to a Pentecostal Christian church. And he said to me that even in the toilet, they have screens, and the sermon that's going on in the main room is getting played in the toilet. So even if you go for a bathroom break, you can still hear the discourse. They have creches, and the creches operate when the classes are on. So the children are organized into age groups, and they're doing activities according to the age, and they're doing spiritual activities, whether it's songs or craft or whatever, with trained caregivers, and the parents are all listening to the discourse in the main auditorium. It's just a really, really good model, something that it would be really good if we could try and do in ISKCON, right? This idea that, more often than not, the women, the Matajis, are the ones that miss the class because they'll go and sit outside with the children. Oh, the children are being loud and disruptive. Oh, well, Mataji, just take them out. And then who misses out? The kid misses out. Also, Mataji misses out as well. So if the temple could be organized enough or has the space and the facilities to have programs on at the same time as the classes, that would go a long way. And it doesn't actually hurt to look at some of these churches and maybe borrow a few ideas that work. Why not? I go to 3 play groups a week with Lally. They're all different. One is a musical one where it's very structured. One is a free play group where it's just a big hall and they have loads of different play sections, cooking, home corner, puzzles, books, all laid out. And the final one is also a free play, unstructured play group. And they are all in churches. Every single one. They are all in churches. And people from the wider community come, and some of them end up coming to the church through these programs as well. So it can actually make devotees out of non-devotees. But I think it is very telling that they're all different churches. It's not that one church is running 3 play groups a week, because that would be probably unmanageable. They're all in different churches, but they're all within a 5K radius of my house, right? The ISKCON temples don't really have that, unless you're at like Bhakti Vedanta Manor where they have baby sanghas and stuff. They're just not having that. And I think that is our next stage of progression. That would be a really nice place that we could come to, where there are facilities for children at the same time as the adult classes that are meaningful, that are actually integrated with the philosophy, and then also that we have community playgroups and things where parents can get together, where they can support each other, and where the children can build relationships as well. Yeah, I really value those playgroups, and it's just I always feel a little bit sad that there isn't one at the temple, and that when I asked if I could put one on, there was a resounding silence. Um, because there's just no one wants to touch it. No one wants to, oh, it's too much work. Oh, it's too difficult. Uh, even though I have all the facilities and I have working with children check and all of that, like it was just, it's too hard. Oh, we don't have this. Oh, and they just didn't want to go there. And I think a lot of temples are like that. They're all a bit apprehensive about going down this road. And I think if we really want to continue as a society, if we really want to have longevity, then the children are, 20% of the population, 100% of the future. So unless we nurture our children through schools and programs and our parents, um, our community becomes unsustainable. Yeah, a community that doesn't have children and young people is a community that has no sustainability, because how can it carry on without that? It's just the law of nature. So um, very, very important aspects of the community. I mean, go the next time you're at Sunday Feast, go sit down and just look around. Look around at how many kids there are. If you've got no kids in your congregation, I would worry. And I would start thinking about talking to management about how you might attract some families and children if you want your temple to carry on and be self-sustaining. But yeah, a community comprises of all types of people from young to old. It's not just sort of young, able-bodied people. It's not just sannyasis. It's not just brahmacharis. It has to have a little bit of us all in there, right? And I'll tell you how powerful these playgroups are for community. I'm a disciple of Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, and for Wadastami last year, I had to go to Vrindavan to see my guru. And while I was there, I stayed in very, very close touch with my family. I was calling them like 4 times a day. And what was really, really interesting was the only people that reached out to me were people from those playgroups. Not a single devotee messaged me and said, how are you? How are you doing? It was Matajis that run the Christian playgroups that I see every week. And the reason I'm not, again, I'm not trying to make people feel bad. What I'm trying to point out is these things are community building. They know that I'm an ISKCON devotee. They know I'm not a Christian. They know I'm never coming to their church. They still messaged me to make sure I was okay. They still cared enough. And that's because we built a relationship through these playgroups. I've donated toys and things to their playgroups. So there's a relationship there. There's a community there. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize here. I'm not trying to criticize anyone. I'm not saying, oh, how poor me, no one messaged me. No. But me as a parent found community through these playgroups. And that's what we need in ISKCON. I'm just trying to use it as an example. And that we can learn from these Christian groups something. We can humble ourselves and say, you know what, we can learn something from these guys. So a key principle of Vaishnava culture is Sangha. What does Sangha mean? Association, assembly, company, or community. I mean, literally all of these keys relate to our sastra. It's just mind-blowing. When I was putting the seminar together, it was literally leaping out at me how much modern science was confirming what's in our sastras. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us all about the importance of Sangha, right? So it's a little surprise that community or Sangha is a major factor in childhood development, just as good association is beneficial to us and our mental health, sense of belonging. Bhakti is even more important for children. So good association and community and stuff is even more important for children because they're still forming. Like when I was talking about the parents who are giving their children a choice whether they want to be devotees or not, like they're still learning about what is bhakti, who is God, who am I, how do I relate to this whole world, all of those things. They're still learning about all of that. And so that's why this community in these early years, remember we're talking about 5, 6 and under, really, really, really important. So in the photo, you will see the children of Phoenix, Arizona, celebrating Rath Yatra together in a child-led festival. And I cannot emphasize child-led festivals enough. If you don't have any child-led festivals in your temple, start one. It's very easy to sit here and kind of be an armchair philosophizer. We can go into our temples and be proactive, at least try. At least try and say, hey, why don't we just start small and have a really small kids Rath Yatra in the park? Or why don't we have a really small kids Janmashtami in the park, in the temple room, or just wherever we've got space, community hall, wherever, a church hall, even anywhere where there's space. Start small and build it up, but be prepared to roll your sleeves up and put the work in. And again, this is where this change in attitude has to come from us as the parents. We can't just expect management to do everything for us. We can't just sit here and wait for this magical, mythical person who's going to come along and deliver our children. It is our responsibility. Prabhupada told us that in his letters. If you get one takeaway from this entire seminar, it is that it is our responsibility to raise our children in Krishna consciousness, and it's our dharmic duty. Remember, we should not become confused or neglect. It's our duty. That's the emphasis here, okay? And we can start with small changes. So here's some nice community photos. We have the Pandavas Sports Carnival at the Gurukul in New Govardhan. So there's the Gurukul in Australia. There's one Gurukul, New Govardhan, and they are doing their sports carnival there. I do like that picture. They've actually put a medal on Krishna, which I think is really, really sweet. Isn't that nice? Someone's won the medal and they've put the medal on Krishna and they've got Krishna on their heads. I think it's such a lovely picture. And then the top photo is Bhaktivedanta Manor preschool. So it's the preschool there. All the kids are sitting in a circle doing some kind of circle time. So community, look how all those kids are with other devotee children. Now, I'm not trying to be all like the play and say, devotee kids shouldn't hang around. Like, that's up to you. That's up to you, right? But it is helpful when you're trying to raise them as devotees if they have some devotee friends. Really, really helpful because kids listen to their friends and they like having friends, and these peer relationships are really, really important to their development as well. And don't just think because they're 5 and 6 and under that they can't have friends. They absolutely can have friends. I've watched Lally. She has friendships at these play groups. She has specific children that she likes to play with, and she has specific moods with the different friends. And Sangha and community, really, really important for a child's development in these early years. And also them seeing that you're part of a community as well. Like, they're witnessing you be part of the community as well. And then when they see that and they see that that's a pleasant and fulfilling experience, then they're naturally going to want to be part of that community as well. That's something we're trying to improve in our house. We're all talking about improving things here. I think we have struggled with the lack of community, and that's why, but again, we're taking steps to make that more favorable by looking for somewhere else to live that's closer to devotees, that's closer to a temple, that's a bit more welcoming, just to us, for us. Might not be that way for other people, but it's all about taking those steps to make bhakti more favorable, to make it easier to practice Krishna consciousness, for your children to see that you are part of something bigger than just your little grihasta ashram at home, which, yes, is very fundamental and important, but then there's the wider community in Sangha as well. It's interesting, like my son witnessed me having a bit of a falling out with a friend who was a devotee. He was like, Mom, you were such good friends, how could this happen? And really painful for him to watch. Children are very impressionable. These things, he said to me, I can't believe a devotee would act this way. I can't believe that this devotee, and I was just like, look, I was trying to be all philosophical about it, but it really hurt him. So the community that you're in is really important. And I know that it's not just possible, it's not realistic that everyone could just move. Of course not. Some of us have bought houses and we can't just move. But if you can, and you have the option to move somewhere that's more favorable, or that maybe has a school, or maybe has more children that are your child's age, or anything like that, do consider making that more favorable for your children, because it really will pay off in the long run. So I want to share with you some further reading. I'm going to share with you a book that made a major impression on me, and probably kind of made me as strong on this as I am. And that was Mother Aruda. Now, her mood is very different to mine. She is so sweet and loving and non-offensive, whereas I just can't seem to help but offend people, even when I try not to. So we're not very similar, but I really love her writing and I really love her message, and I really look up to her a lot. And if I wish I could be as sweet and agreeable and likable as her, but unfortunately, alas, my karmas do not allow that to be so. So she wrote a book called Homeschooling Krishna's Children. She also has a plethora of talks on YouTube about raising children in Krishna consciousness. Watch them. Read that book. That book will not take you long to read. It's not very long at all. And it's a must read for every parent, not just Matajis, Prabhujis as well. Teachers, anyone. It's called Homeschooling Krishna's Children, but it's really about raising children in Krishna consciousness. And for that matter, all of Mother Aruda's books. She's got a whole range of study guides. I highly recommend those. They go through the Srimad Bhagavatam chapter by chapter. If your child is, especially if your child is not going to a gurukul and you are teaching scripture at home, it offers you a framework in which to do that. Now, they start with the child being young, sort of like 5 or 6 with Canto 1, and then as the cantos progress, it becomes more complicated because your child's getting older as the books go. So they're very good books. All the books and all the talks by Mother Aruda, I can't rate enough. They really are must watches and must reads. And you know, I bought the Bhagavatam study guides when I was pregnant. Now I know obviously I wasn't expecting my child to be able to use them right away, but I got them in ahead of time. Another really good book that's good for kids is called Becoming Your Devotee by Gaurangi Gandharvika Devi Dasi. Fantastic book. Oh my God, it's brilliant. And again, under 5, there's not so much in there for it, but buy it ready for when your child's a bit older. And you can still read parts of it to them. It's very visual, it's very child friendly. Also, illustrated Bhagavad Gita study guide by Mother Urmila. Fantastic. Again, you're probably thinking, why is an under 5 going to need that? Get these materials ready and lined up so you're not scrambling when they get older and they're there and they're ready. And what's really beautiful about that book is it's got all the verses, and then you can go to Mother Urmila's website, and then there's like the MP3 kind of recordings of those verses, so you can practice the shlokas with your children, and you can do that when they're little. You can absolutely start teaching them the Sanskrit sounds and verses under the age of 6. So that book is useful for that. And then as they grow and they progress and as they mature, you can start introducing more and more of the book to them. But those are some must-have books. And that illustrated Bhagavad Gita guide is only $14 on Amazon at the moment. And I know that because I've bought several copies of it. If you follow Bhakti Kids Sangha, you'll know that I build children's libraries in ISKCON centres and other temples, because as I progressed through this service, I noticed that the parents were not wanting to spend money on the books for the children themselves. So I thought the best way that I can't afford to buy a book for every child. So I was buying the books, building the libraries in the temples, and at least the kids were seeing the books that way. So I've bought many copies of Mother Urmila's illustrated Bhagavad Gita study guide, and I highly recommend it. So if you go on to Bhakti Kids Sangha on Instagram and Facebook, I do very detailed book reviews. You're welcome to take a look at them, and you know, I have pictures and I give very detailed reviews from the parents' point of view and the kids' point of view, so you can check that out. Please check out the platform for the podcast, for the classes by kids and for kids. There's lots and lots of interviews there with the authors of these books. So I have actually interviewed Mother Aruda, I've interviewed Mother Urmila, I've interviewed Gaurangi Gandharvika Devi Dasi. So if you want to hear more about these books, you can. And actually, in saying that, I want to share with you, there's some new books that have just come out after I made this seminar, and they are literally specifically for children who are under the age of 5 and 6. And they are ISKCON's very first board book series. And before people start freaking out, I'm not paid to advertise anything. I'm not being, I haven't been engaged to promote this in any way. I've got these books because I really like them. I interviewed Nanda Priya about these books because I think they're brilliant, and I think we really needed these. So there's no advertising or promotion or anything happening here. I'm literally just suggesting what I think is going to be beneficial for your children. And this is this box set. So these books all come in a box set. I wish I had the box to show you, but unfortunately my daughter ripped it. But the books themselves are incredibly durable. They are board books, so they're suitable for a baby. Can you see? They're very, very tough. And these are your baby's first books. These should be your baby's first books. And they are all about Krishna's favorites, Krishna's numbers, Krishna's colors, the 9 processes of devotional service, Krishna's arti. Yeah, you see, all of these things are creating the samskaras in our child's mind very early on. Now, what books normally get given to children when they're really, really young? They're usually pretty mundane, or it's like, oh, these are the colors, and these are the numbers, and it's all very kind of like a bit basic and a bit boring. Whereas what this does is it links everything to Krishna, and that's what you're trying to do. So I highly recommend, if you have a child under the age of 6, in investing in these board books, because every child deserves beautiful Krishna conscious books. And connecting things like colors and numbers and all those things to Krishna is in those early years really, really special. So I just thought I'd add that in. I kind of spontaneously thought of that because when I put this seminar together, those books weren't out yet. But they are a wonderful example of how you can introduce Krishna consciousness to an under 5 or 6-year-old. So I did go on for a little bit longer than what I'd hoped. I'm sorry it was a little bit long, but I felt like it's such an important topic. We can't cut corners, right? We can't cut corners. And I spent a lot of time making this seminar. So I really wanted to make sure I covered everything. So I really want to thank you so much for listening. If you've listened all the way to the end, I think it's safe to say that you are a very dedicated parent because you've listened to this entire thing. And there will be things that you don't agree with. There'll be things that you agree with. There'll be things that you think, I don't want to do that. That's fine, right? This was an invitation to think. This was an invitation to do some personal inquiry about how we're raising our children, how we are kind of integrating them in the temple, how we're looking at children in the wider society. And all of the science, so all of the kind of facts and information that I gave about sort of neural connections and brain mass and stuff, all came from a website called Thrive by 5. It's an Australian website organization. I actually recommend you go and check it out. It's got lots and lots of really, really beautiful and practical examples like there were in this seminar. I kind of reframed them in Krishna consciousness, but there's hundreds and thousands of them on that website, and you can also do the same with a bit of imagination. And it's a very, very good website, 5 by 5, and it helps you kind of find practical, day-to-day, accessible ways of integrating all of those keys that we just discussed into your life. So I won't harp on any longer. Thank you so much for listening. You're a wonderful parent and you love your children, and sometimes all that's required is a little few tweaks, like a little bit of tweaking here and there and adjustments, or a little shift in perspective. And I'm saying that as someone who went through that themselves. I read Mother Aruda's Homeschooling Krishna's Children when I was pregnant with my daughter, and that made me have a massive shift. And that's why I put this seminar together, because I thought if I can share that I had that shift, that I went through that, then maybe other people will be encouraged to go through that shift as well, and to see that Vaishnava children really are, the heart of our society. They really are. Without children, there is no chance that our society can progress and build and continue. So it really does require a little bit of a shift in focus, but I guarantee it will be 100% worth it. And your children are going to benefit in so many unlimited ways. I completely understand that it's easy to assume that a child under the age of 6 is really, really not taking in much. I mean, it's how it appears. But actually, I hope I've emphasized in this talk just how informative and important that this time actually is in forming their overall character when they're an adult, their self-esteem, their mental health, their spiritual health, their physical health, all of those things we've touched upon in this seminar. So thank you so much for listening. The next seminar will focus on children above the age of 5, probably to about 10 or 11. And I'm probably not going to go into teen years because I don't know too much about teenagers. I'll be honest. I'm still learning. Hopefully someone with teenagers will make a seminar on that. You are welcome to send me a message. You can message me on Instagram and Facebook, and yeah, just shoot me a message if you have any questions, if you have any comments or any feedback on this seminar. I hope you received it well. I know at times I can sound a little strong, what to do. That's just my personality. I feel pretty passionately about some of these things, and it's never my intention to criticize or any individual devotees or temple or anything like that. It is all to improve the situation and to encourage that shift in focus and that little change in culture that's required in ISKCON for us to continue. So that was Vaishnava Children, the heart of our society. My name was Abhidaya Devi Dasi. I ask you to bless me in my service. Hare Krishna, and see you next time. Hari Bol.